morning, and welcome to Shift+F1, a podcast about speedy race cars. That, by the way, is Singlish for to hitch a ride. Something germane to the end of this race, as we'll see. Tompang evidently derived from the Malay tompang, which means to take shelter with. And thank you to our Singaporean patron, Werty11, for the suggestion.
Thank you.
We're learning a lot of Singlish over here.
That's great. You should outsource these. You've been doing this for like 8 years. I find, eventually you're going to run out of idioms. But Singlish is a bountiful language.
It is. As a Creole, there's all kinds of stuff going on.
Yeah.
I'm Drew Scanlon. Joining me, Danny O'Dwyer. How are you, Danny?
I'm just very excited because my dear friend Rob Zachney is back. Rob's here. Introduce Rob so we can talk to Rob.
Back
Rob's
in this
here.
galaxy, Rob Zachney. How are you, Rob?
I am thriving. And by the way, Drew, before I left for Disney, Drew gave me some very sage advice on how to dress as a Star Wars person. And that stood me in good stead. I went to the Galactic Star Cruiser with a wardrobe that would pass muster for all Star Wars scenes. I managed to do it where I concealed all fasteners, supports, laces. No, there was one shirt that had laces, but beyond that, no buttons, no fasteners. I felt very in character.
Did you are you allowed to dress up as Star Wars? I've seen people on like social media dressing up as Star Wars characters there, and I thought that they were against that at Disney. You can't dress up
they
like
don't
the
want
characters.
They don't want it to be too good, right?
Okay.
So like the thing that Disney's really looking out for is like if you show up in a like Disney World actor grade Mickey Mouse suit. They can't have that. They can't have you
That
being
sounds
like,
fair.
you're just Danny, but you look identical to the Mickey that everyone's there to see. And
That's
you're
like
just
turning
yeah,
up
I'll
at
take
like-
a picture with your kids.
Yeah,
$5,
that's not okay.
kid.
That's like
Give me a
turning up
kid.
at like an NFL game with like pads on and a helmet and everything. It's just
Right.
yeah, that's too much.
But no, the Star Cruiser, they do encourage people to. But the thing is that the thing they're not encouraging you to do is dress up as like Han Solo or something. Like so, it's look as if you're an extra in Star Wars.
Okay,
Don't look
yeah.
like you're a main character in Star Wars.
You're not Rey, or so if I like painted myself green and I said I was like Yoda's like. Well, actually,
They'd be fine with that.
Yoda's Irish cousin, like a leprechaun kind of. Are there leprechauns in Star Wars? Can I be like that? Like Leprechaun 4. No, that was in the hood. Leprechaun 5, I think, was the one in space. Maybe I could be that guy. They'd be all right with that, probably, right?
Yeah,
Probably.
I mean, it's totally like you just explain that like Yoda likes swamps, but you're more of a bog Jedi Master.
Yeah, more of a bog.
And-
Exactly. Yeah, a
Yeah.
peat bog. Can you dress up as like a square character and in Disneyland and sort of like
you can go like full. So they have Kingdom Hearts merch all over.
Oh, they do.
Mm.
So, yeah, they do. So like that fan was being serviced. So maybe you could.
Maybe my Keyblade will get you through security.
No, they will confiscate anything that
Oh,
looks too
okay.
weapon-like, and a Keyblade might just like, as Cicero said, like the blade itself excites to violence. Like you
Yes.
can't let people have like replica Keyblades because they might just go buck wild.
And yet lightsabers. Okay.
Nope, they will take those away too.
Oh, really?
Well, yeah, at Star Cruiser they did. They were like, you can bring them up for photo ops, but don't be running around with lightsabers.
Wow.
You can have one clipped to your belt, but don't put the blade in.
Typical
Yeah.
liberal California, not allowing you to open carry your
This is
lightsaber in
Florida.
a theme park. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, call up Ron. I guess it's on his watch.
Well, look, Ron is on the Disney situation from what I gather. He is eager to make sure they never release an anodyne statement about inclusion again.
Yeah, well, that's what happens when they wouldn't let him get married there. So he took it personally.
I have to shout out my colleague Dan Amrick, whose advice is what got passed to you, Rob. I am no Star Wars fashion expert, but I was.
It was good advice, and
Yeah.
I will pass on this secret. Wearing suspenders under a shirt hides buttons, belts, all this stuff. So you'll have a seamless like flow of clothes without having any of the things that, subtly enough, Star Wars characters just don't have that you fully expect them to.
They use the Force to keep their pants up.
They don't use zippers. It was very funny watching like every Star Wars piece of kit has like it has a zipper, but it will have a huge flap to like sort of cover it over, like a little mini double-breasted situation. So that zipper tucks in laterally, and there's no sign of it.
Movie
Well,
magic.
If you're new to this Formula One podcast, a very warm welcome to you. And if you're new to the sport itself, we've got an episode just for you. Our preseason primer episode assumes no prior F1 or Star Wars knowledge and explains how the sport works and who everybody is. This year's primer is episode 216, if you'd like to go back and listen to that. Also, this show would not be possible without our audience over at patreon.com/ShiftF1, where every month we release an ad-free version of the podcast, along with bonus podcasts and videos exclusively for those patrons that cover racing documentaries and films, F1 video games, experiments with other racing series, and a lot of weird things. So if you would like to support the show and get access to all that fun stuff, head over to patreon.com/ShiftF1 or click the link in the show notes. What do we have going on this month, Danny?
Speaking of other racing series, we have decided to dive into the world of Sail GP. Sail. What's your best sail? Do a sail.
Sail!
Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, you guys are good. Sail GP.
I kind of can't do it without smoke pouring. Like, I feel like the lights need to flash and smoke needs to pour across the stage.
Sail. Yeah. What a hit. And of course it eventually inspire an entire racing series on boats, which came up as was this an email a number of weeks ago? I think it was.
Last week. Yeah.
Thank you very much to our emailer. You have inspired us to check out Sail GP, the season 3 finale we're going to watch. So if you go to Sail GP, of course, is a boating. It's F1 on water. It's boats. What are they? Catamarans? I don't know about anything about boats. They're super fast boats.
We're about to know, Danny.
We are. We're going to know so much by the time we record this next week, I swear. We're going to watch the final of season 3. Which happened 4 months ago in the San Francisco Bay, which separates myself and Drew right here. So you can actually go watch this yourself if you so please. It was over 2 days. There were 90-minute long races or videos. If you go to Sail GP's YouTube channel and just go to the live tab, that's where they have all of the races, and just scroll down to. I mean, we'll probably put a link to the actual specific one in the show notes today. Thanks, Drew. And that's what we're going to talk about, the San Francisco leg, as it were.
Worth noting, also in Adrian Newey's autobiography, How to Build a Car, he mentions that really what he'd like to do, you know how Murray Walker, really what he wanted to do was commentate on snooker?
Right, yeah.
Adrian Newey really just wants to build boats.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's his thing? He's a boatman?
Well, I think...
No goddamn engines.
Right.
That's why.
Only air.
Just pure dynamics, hydrodynamics.
It's wild.
He would somehow design one of these boats where it's like, we're only going to have like a 3-inch contact patch between the boat and the water, and the rest of it's just going to be gliding.
It's so weird. Like, they're all just looking at the highlights. They're all like flying around on hydrofoils. It's just, I'm excited to learn just what is going on.
It looks like
here.
magic. It looks like when somebody tries to show you their perpetual motion machine or something, and you're like, there's something going on here. There's a magnet hidden in here somewhere.
It also seems like I'm curious to see what the broadcast is like, what the sport is like to watch. A
lot of views on these live streams. There's like hundreds of thousands of views on them. I mean, which, that's not millions, but like...
This is me coming back to this a little bit because I watched a few broadcasts of this a few years ago, and they're really like weirdly high tech too. Like, it's a really good broadcast. I just found the sport kind of inscrutable. Okay. It was like fantastic graphics package, and then I was like, but boats though, and why are they flying?
Rob
let's unscrew.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I didn't know Zachney was a secret skipper among us the entire time.
If I had to pick one of us.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah. I bet he could sing a killer shanty as well. I bet you got that down.
Rock that the hat with like pieces of rope on it.
Exactly. If you would like to, the hat with pieces of rope, for some reason my brain went to one of those Australian cork hats, which I feel like I don't see those anymore. Have they been cancelled or something? Is there
what?
You know those like the brimmed cap with like corks hanging down on strings? Am I imagining this? Did I have a stroke? What's going on? No one? Nothing? Okay. Maybe this is... I feel like this is like a Crocodile Dundee thing or something.
Is this something they sell at like wineries?
No, I don't think so. maybe it's something my wine-addled brain made up. Let us know. shiftf1podcast@gmail.com. And thank you to all of our incredible title sponsors. Agave ATX, Cyphus Training, Turf SCS, at Team Blackjack, Michael Maves, Gordy's Army, at Talking Autos, Olivia Evans, telemetrydeck.com, FTC, Drew Stewart, Bailey Foot, Abdullah Althani, Jason Chadwick, Abraham Getchell, The Space Above Us, Bunny Fiend, Snigs, Alex Couchet, Max Faltar, Circuit Demon, Troy Stammer, Umberto Roca, William Rumpf, Irvine Clinical Research, Lachlan the Madden Man, Jason Kelly, and M Squared Racing welcomes Ellie. Welcome, Ellie. Hope Ellie's here by now. I'm not quite sure when Ellie was coming, but hopefully she's around to check out our awesome Sail GP podcast next week. Over to you, Drew Scatlin.
Thanks, Danny. Real good throw. Speaking of broadcasts.
Yeah. Well, it's a whole new style we're messing with here. We're all different reporters. I'm the reporter on the patrons. I'll be quiet now for the rest of the podcast. Everyone's very happy.
So, all right. Usually what I do is run down the grid, starting with Max Verstappen and then everyone else who's behind him. This time I'm going to go kind of by qualifying session like we used to do. Yuki Tsunoda will line up 15th. He got impeded by Verstappen in Q2. No penalty there.
Yeah.
Valtteri Bottas 16th. Oscar Piastri 17th. Logan Sargent also got impeded by Max Verstappen during qualifying. No penalty there. Zhou Guanyu in 19th and technically lining up 20th, but does not start the race. Lance Stroll had a rough crash.
Oh, boy. Oh, man. I was watching this one. There was a shocker. Just an absolute tank slapper on turn. I think it's now turn 11, the final turn, basically.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a double apex turn. I think it's 10 and 11, and he just lost it. He cooked it a bit into 10, and then
curb.
Yeah, and just like there's not much runoff there into that wall. He walked away, thankfully. Car was in tatters. Yeah. He obviously wasn't very happy about it from a qualifying perspective, but I think it's one of those crashes like where, you know, like and I'm not saying this to be overly dramatic or anything like that, but the makeup of this particular corner reminds me quite a bit of Tamburello, where Senna crashed, you know what I mean? Where it's like a super fast left-hander and there's just like a wall there. Yeah, and obviously it's not a concrete wall, but you're carrying a lot of speed into that, and I think it's like, you know, and obviously Senna's actually what happened to him was relatively freak piece of assembly. But I think it's really amazing that Stroll was like literally on the radio immediately, had the wherewithal to take his hands off. Did you notice that? Like,
and then
half
immediately
a second.
shut the car down before it had stopped moving.
Yeah.
Like Stroll's racing form has been all over the map this year, but in terms of like instincts and reactions, like he is quite well trained and practiced in the car. Like, yeah, the like trying to save it to the last split second, hand off the wheel, and then if you watch that replay, the second the impact has hit, his hands are back on the wheel and he's putting the car back in like safe mode. It's pretty ridiculous.
It's crazy. It's crazy how I wonder how like the not normalization of the crashes, but I do wonder if like crashes for some of these drivers, because he's had a couple of rough ones. He had a bad one in, is it Monza or somewhere a couple of years back? I think he had a bad one at the exit of Parabolic, actually. Not all that dissimilar to this in a way. And I wonder if they are just a little bit, it's less crazy, maybe, you know, or like, do they drive half expecting to crash all the time because they're just like on the limit?
I don't know, because he went to the medical center and was cleared. But the team said that they just decided that he's not going to race. I think it may have also been the fact that the car was effectively totally, it was almost torn in half. Not quite a Grosjean situation, but ripped a tire off and a lot of the left side pod, I think it was.
It did seem hard to believe he wouldn't be a little concussed, though. You see his head whipping around in there, like it, like, you know, they haven't confirmed anything. It seems like it may have just been a better safe than sorry call, especially given how wrecked the car was. But looking at the head motion and the impact, you're looking at it, and it's football season, so I've got this, you know, in the back of my mind. But like, there's no way people wouldn't be putting their hands up at seeing that replay, being like, you need to get that person off the pitch. We need to have a look at how they're doing. But yeah, I'm glad he's okay. Also, another really inauspicious outing for Stroll, in a
Yeah.
season that's been full of them.
And look, it's like not just taking one race as the total data set, but we'll come to him in a second. But also, just Alonso's position, it really shows you how the Astons went from being this powerhouse or seemingly really challenging at the top to just slipping away, like while everyone else got their developments in.
Well, could it be their similarity to Red Bull that is costing them in Singapore? Because check out this list from Q2 in 11th place, Max Verstappen. 12th, Pierre Gasly. 13th, Sergio Perez. This is the first time since Sochi 2018 that Red Bull did not have a car in Q3.
That's wild.
Max Verstappen also noted for stopping in the pit lane in Q1. Some radio messages saying that, or implying that there was maybe a problem with the car. He was cleared of penalty. Sergio Perez spun the car at the end of Q2, which is also the same place that Verstappen had trouble with on his final Q2 lap. So they did not proceed. Max set a good enough time to go 10th fastest. And then Liam Lawson finished his lap. This is his third Formula One race in the sister team's car, knocked Max Verstappen out of Q3. I also should mention Alex Albon lined up 14th and Yuki Tsunoda 15th. And Red Bull really didn't have an answer for what I think they kind of know more than they're letting on, of course, but Christian Horner kind of just attributed it to a setup problem. This quote from F1.com. Quote, I think that maybe our simulation before the weekend didn't lead us to the right conclusion, and then you have to unravel your way out of that. I think we just ended up in the wrong window that exposed some of the weaknesses that the car has, which has actually been a useful lesson for next year because it gives us some very useful insight into some things that we can address in the RB20. But from practice, the Red Bull was not looking good.
No, and they never dialed it in. And in fact, you could argue that it was worse at qualifying than at any other part. I think Lando Norris was caught laughing at the onboard of Max Verstappen's car because he said he'd never seen a car behave that badly. And it was funny. Coming up to the Singapore Grand Prix, I was reminded of the fact that Max Verstappen has never won this race. And I was thinking, another
it's a bugbear for them.
He'll break this one as well. Another record to break, rather.
Oh yeah.
Obviously not setting him up for a good one. When Lawson came in, that was quite cool because it looked like Max was just about squeaked in, but there was a lot of track evolution as well in Q2, which meant it so that a lot of the late runners seemed to gain a 10th on everyone else, which was very interesting.
Yeah, really entertaining sessions from start to back. Qs 1 through 3, and then the race. Really exciting to watch. But yes, with no Red Bulls in Q3, it was kind of up in the air about what the front of the grid would look like. And it lined up like this. On pole position, Carlos Sainz Jr. in the Ferrari. 700ths faster than George Russell, lining up second. Then the other Ferrari of Charles Leclerc. Lando Norris fourth. Then the other Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton in fifth. In sixth place, the Haas of Kevin Magnussen.
Unbelievable. He was so happy when they crossed the line. Yeah.
Also, probably pretty happy to have outqualified his teammate.
Yes.
Which he's only done a handful of times so far this season.
A rarity.
Seventh place is Fernando Alonso. Eighth place is Esteban Ocon. Ninth place is where Nico Hülkenberg lines up, and Liam Lawson rounds out the top 10. Wow.
Crazy.
Already a mixed bag.
The minute this thing qualifying ended, and this is not me patting myself on the back, but we had a conversation about this maybe 5 or 6 races into the season where we were hypothesizing about the Formula 1.5s of the world. Back when Mercedes were dominant, and there was the subreddits where they would basically pretend Mercedes wasn't there and just do the season anyway. And I was thinking about how like it is kind of a shame that Red Bull are so far ahead, because it seems like there's this really interesting battle happening with everyone else.
Yeah.
And this was like this was a great example of like Red Bull took the weekend off and we got like, imagine if the season had looked like this.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had this type of battling between like at least 3 teams who could have won this race or qualified, or it was amazing. Like qualifying was bananas. Nobody knew what was going to happen in the race, and then honestly, like Ferrari's kind of like weirdly dialed in strategy made this maybe less of a competition than it could have been, but it was so cool. And I'm sorry to Red Bull fans. I'm not saying you shouldn't exist, your team shouldn't exist, but right. it just shows you that once you have one team that's leaps ahead of everyone else, it does sap so much of the perceived racing out of it, which largely these same teams are racing this hard, but for just lower positions. But it has an effect, right? It really does.
Yeah. Well, let's get to the race, Danny, where no one knows what's going to happen. Tell us what happens at the start.
What happens is they stick Charles Leclerc on a pair of softs because Ferrari are thinking track position here, Singapore, is pretty key.
Yeah, we got to jump George.
A little bit less so because they took out that one section. Rob, I'm not sure if you knew about that prior to the race. Because I only learned about it just before the podcast that they had chopped out those 4 turns. Magnussen brought it up as well in his interviews. He was like, it's a shame they don't have that section in there. It might be easier for me to hold people off, because he was worried about basically being gobbled up and not getting any points for Haas.
Yeah.
For Charles, though, I guess the plan was to try and jump Russell in second and try and stay with his teammate. Carlos had a great start, so did Leclerc. Russell didn't have an amazing one. Leclerc was past him by the time they got into turn 1. That sort of caused George to seize up a little bit, and you had Lewis Hamilton side by side with him on a racing line that was always going to disappear. Lewis basically put pedal to the metal and decided to jump the corner. He had to go around this bollard that they stuck down, sort of like Barcelona, on the right-hand side.
Full Leroy Jenkins.
He did, yeah, exactly. Right around the outside of that. He also got past Lando in this situation. He kind of jumped him, but he ended up in front of Russell. Over the next lap and a half or 2 laps, it took him a while to give back the second place, but he did give George back his place, and then eventually also conceded the one to Lando. Stewart said they'd noted it, so I think that was enough to sort of shake Mercedes's bush and ask Hamilton rather gingerly to give the position back. So you basically had the 2 Ferraris in front, followed by George Russell and Lando Norris behind him, and Hamilton behind him, and Alonso then, who, I alluded to the fact that maybe they didn't have a great weekend. Obviously he qualified well, so put him in a good position, at least at the start of the race.
Yeah, Sergio Perez did some YOLOing himself, crunching into Yuki Tsunoda in his race. Unfortunately,
the first of a lot of scruffy incidents with Perez this race. Like his in-car is incriminating.
They did. Well, we'll get to the worst one. Although the Tsunoda one was bad.
It's bad.
The worst one wasn't televised.
Yeah.
That's how bad it was.
You know the Albon one? The one where we'll get to. Yeah, that one
shocking.
Is
yeah.
Lap 20, Sargent having some issues with this tricky street circuit. Car just does not turn, and he noses into the wall at low speed, has to limp back to the pits with his front wing kind of stuck under his car, spitting carbon fiber everywhere, which brings out the safety car right at a critical stage, because this is right when the medium tires are getting toward the end of their usefulness. Most teams are on the medium tires except for Red Bull. So we get a lot of double stacking here, teams going onto the hard tires. Sainz stop goes well, but his teammate Leclerc right behind him is prevented from leaving his pit box by traffic. So he ends up losing places to both Russell and Norris. I mean, that can happen when everyone wants to dive the pits.
Brundle also put it down to Leclerc was helping the team out a little bit more by slowing down even further on entry. And so he dropped himself into a more complicated traffic pattern than he would otherwise have been in. So, if that is what happened, on a few levels, he took one for the team, across this race. But that one it was a shame because he was doing great work there in the tail gunner position, and he was kind of taken out of the fight for the latter part of this race. Like, he was still out there, but he just wasn't in there for the podium duel.
Yeah. So the Red Bulls opt not to stop because they are on those that other strategy.
It's a bad time for them. Yeah.
It's I think Horner said after the race that was literally the worst time.
Yeah.
They instead opt to take the track position that affords them. Verstappen was in 8th and Perez in 13th, but after the stops, it is Sainz in 1st, then Verstappen, then Russell, Perez in 4th, Norris, Leclerc in 6th, Hamilton 7th.
And then we get to watch something which seems like a sort of an inversion of the universe we live in, which is 2 Red Bulls plummeting down the order.
Yes.
It was very odd to see.
Even their straight line speed.
It makes sense, but it just, to my eyes, it was very, this doesn't seem right at all. Cats and dogs talking to each other.
Right. They're on those old tires. They aren't hooked up for whatever reason on this track. Also, I should point out that Red Bull at least has said that their performance this weekend has nothing to do with the technical directive that we talked about last week with the flexible wings and flexible floors. That's them. Although David Croft also said that people at other teams that he talked to didn't think so either. So I guess we'll see in Japan whether
there's also
this trend continues.
One of the things, my understanding, because I don't fully, circuits have fit like broader templates or profiles, and Singapore is kind of a weird one.
Yeah,
that teams sort of optimize like what sort of circuits are we going to be strong at, but Singapore, I think by a few metrics, is a bit of an outlier. And so in a weird way, I wonder, is this the place where like Red Bull have built a car that's dominant at so many different versions of F1 tracks that there's something about Singapore where it doesn't really fit other templates. It's not like Baku. It's just kind of a different kettle of fish. Plus, weather conditions are so different. I wonder if that's the other big part of it is
heat,
like so much of how these
humidity.
cars function is how well they work in their tires. And does the fact that like the air is heavy with humidity and it is hot as hell, does that kind of destroy the Red Bull advantage?
It's also a track that, like, pragmatically, if there is going to be a track to not be optimized for, this is probably a good shout because there literally has never not been a safety car here, and there's often like weirdnesses that happen. So if there's always chaos happening here when it comes to when you're supposed to pit, then it's probably a good track to have as your sort of B tier track, just in case, because even the best strategy on a day could be thrown out the window if a crash happens at the wrong time.
Yeah, just a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
But yeah, back to Red Bull on the restart. It's on one of the straights. We cut to a helicopter shot that shows Russell passing Verstappen while Norris is passing Perez. And then Hamilton tries to squeeze by Perez too. He can't quite get it done, but right. To put it in Max Verstappen's language, shocking. And they continue to plummet. Norris gets by Verstappen on lap 24 for 3rd place. Hamilton gets by him for lap 20 on lap 27 for 4th place. And then lap 37, we get a pretty great battle between the ailing Perez in 7th, followed by Alonso and Ocon, who both smell blood in the water. Alonso swings around Perez. Perez gets him back soon after, but with that lost momentum, Ocon then pounces on Alonso and then squeezes up the inside. Really great move to take 8th place. Ocon looked so strong in this race.
Yeah. It's also worth mentioning that there's this sort of increased tempo throughout the race. Like the start of the race, there was a little bit of action, but largely the next 20 laps until the safety car were kind of fairly benign. And then we started seeing some of this there was like interesting tire stuff. Oh, I wonder what's going to happen. Is there going to be another safety car? And then it's almost bubbling by the time they get down to the last 10 laps. Then the last 3 laps are just like completely insane. So I found it a very interesting watching experience, because at the start I was like, oh, okay, it's a bit sleepy. And then it was almost like I had the pacing of like a movie, where it just got more and more compelling and really sort of crested at the end. It was cool.
Yeah, part of that I think is down to Verstappen, pitting from 6th to get off of those hard tires finally. He comes out in 15th and then begins, that climb through the field that we see, occasionally with front-running teams being on different strategies. Alas, though, for Ocon, lap 43, despite that stellar performance, he's got to pull over and retire, which brings out the virtual safety car. And Mercedes then decides to spice things up a little bit and pits both cars from 2nd and 4th to go from hard to medium tires for the remaining 18 laps. So this cedes track position, but Sainz, Norris, and Leclerc will now have a long way to go on their old hard tires to hold those two off. And if you've watched F1 for long enough, this is when your mouth starts to water.
Yeah, it's a very interesting situation, because 18 softs weren't an option. It's too long, but 18 feels good for mediums here. It feels like they're going to be singing for those like last 8 laps, and it all just depends on how much they can manage, how much Sainz can manage the hards, and in a way how like we end up like it ends up sort of becoming this weird like the enemy of my enemy is my friend situation, where you have the 2 front-running drivers, Sainz and Norris, who probably understand that if they fight each other tooth and nail, they're both going to lose out to the Mercedes. And the other interesting thing is that these 2 guys used to be teammates, so they probably have a sort of a connection. They probably understand each other.
They're drift compatible.
They are drift exactly. They are drift compatible. So it becomes this super interesting game of tire wear, and Sainz has obviously done a great weekend here and last weekend too, and he seems to be good at this. He's kind of like Hamilton. He's like good at like keeping energy in these things and right until the end. So yeah, like you said, mouth-watering stuff.
Someone who doesn't have a great pit stop is Alonso, who had an issue with the jack, goes from 6th to 17th and last.
What was it, like 26-second stop?
It was terrible.
Idle.
He also, the first pit stop, couldn't slow down enough and had to go over the white pit in line back onto the track and then cut back into the pit, which is a definite no-no.
Yeah, dangerous stuff. Yeah,
weekend to forget for that team.
It was a really terrible pit stop. I haven't seen a pit stop that bad in a while. Like, there was multiple things wrong. The jack in the front, the jack in the back, they had problems with the rear right. It was just a nasty one.
But lap 48, we are back to racing, and Verstappen is in 11th and anxious for points, makes a great dive on Zhou for 10th place, and basically passes 1 car per lap for a while. And remember, I don't know what corner that was by number, but Perez tries something similar without maybe, I don't know, the exact conditions to make it stick a little later. Shout out though to Liam Lawson, who while he can't really do much to defend from Verstappen, does at least make an attempt, and he does so without jeopardizing either car. I just thought this was a real mature drive from him. Not only is this his 3rd F1 race, he has never driven at Singapore before. No, no junior formulas have been here. So
the interviews with him before this weekend were very interesting. He was like, "Yeah, I don't know. It seems fucked up. Like, I don't know what this is going to be. What this is going to be like. I'll try my best." There's a couple of like other things that are happening that we don't get much eyeballs on in real time. But at some stage, Haas decide to pit Magnussen. He ends up like putting in a pretty impressive stint on the hards, and then they swap him onto softs for the end of the race. I don't have the tire chart here in front of me, but I think.
Oh yeah, it's around when Mercedes pits, so he's got to do 19 laps on the softs.
Yeah, and he is in, I think, 15th he comes out in, I think, is as low as he got, ahead of Bottas.
14th, yeah.
Oh, was he? Okay. Oh, and then Alonso pitted in front of him, so then he got ahead of Alonso. Okay.
Yeah. And then Bottas goes out. I don't remember this. Lap 51.
Yeah, did they pull him? I do remember this. Did he retire?
He pulled over. There was kind of a lot happening.
There was. I mean, there was loads. We didn't see Perez crash into Albon.
Right.
Because they were too busy watching the front of the pack. There was loads of bits we missed.
There were a number of like, oh, yellow flag. Oh, now it's green. And it was, it was cars like Valtteri Bottas pulling off with a problem. And then we never got back to him. So, but yeah, Magnussen came out in 14th place on soft tires. And then, tore it up. We'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Just a quick thing. I do appreciate how many convenient escape roads off the track surface this track appears to have, where people were able to retire without bringing the race to a screeching halt. And boy, is that a beautiful luxury. To have people able to just stop their car safely, and then the race isn't profoundly altered because someone had a mechanical failure.
Even Ocon, who parked at the exit of the pit lane, which seemed, or pit lane exit, the end of the pit lane exit, which seemed like a particularly tricky part. He just had to pull over. The one problem though is that those exit roads tend to let in quite a high number of lizards.
That's right.
We had another massive iguana during, I think it was P1, which
apparently they're tree monitors.
Oh, is that what they are? The tree monitors, track monitors. Which we got some good like pit lane repeat humor from some of the engineers as well, which I appreciated, referencing the old Godzilla gags from the last one.
It's also a bit endearing how like the lengths the drivers will go to avoid hitting an animal on track. You see the lizard sort of ambling across the track, and you see these guys like yanking these cars in hard turns to avoid taking out the lizard.
Yeah, fair play. They got good hearts. Not just Sebastian Vettel. They're all animal lovers.
I'd like to think they have good hearts. I do wonder if it's also, boy, that's going to really demolish a front wing.
Yeah.
Hit me in the face.
$100,000 lizard. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody. Yeah. Imagine what a nut did to poor Felipe Massa. Can you imagine a monitor lizard to the face? No thanks. Be picking bits of lizard out of your teeth for weeks.
Lap 53 is when Russell, on his new medium tires, catches the rear gunner of Charles Leclerc. And while he has to bide his time and pass with a cutback, Russell is looking very strong, and we've still got 9 laps to go. Hamilton gets by Leclerc on the next lap. And then lap 58 is the moment that and I think a lot of viewers got a glimpse of Carlos Sainz's true ability as an F1 driver. A few laps prior, he had told his team that he wanted to be told of the gap to Norris behind him every lap, which at that point was a couple of seconds or so. And on lap 58, Sainz engineer radios to say, perhaps a little frantically, Lando 0.8 seconds behind with DRS, to which Sainz replies, yeah, it's on purpose, which is some real awesome. Love you, I know business.
Oh, God.
Hey, leave strategy to me. I've got this one, and which is fair, right? Because like I can understand why Sainz was keeping his own counsel on this, because it's like, who do you trust to call this race? But I do like that the team didn't know why he wanted that info, and we're just feeding it to him as if he's worried about Lando, and really he is making sure that he has a wall between him and the charging Mercedes.
It's so good. It's so good just to protect. And what I love about it is that Lando also seemed, I mean, I don't know how much more he could have pushed the McLaren, but Lando also seemed to get the assignment. And it makes sense because like Russell and Hamilton have gobbled up all of this time. Their tires are in, like they're desperately both worried about both Mercedes. Like they are. And so it's not a case of like, it is much more of a threat than anything else, so it makes complete sense. But it's just it was like something out of it was like an initial D moment. It was like
it really was.
And,
And it's one of the few.
besties. This is Lando's favorite teammate, the only one he appears to have not hated in F1
Yeah,
or secretly been like sticking pins into a doll effigy of. But I will say this as well. So after the Leclerc, even the Leclerc overtake appeared to go hard for Russell. Like it was like Leclerc made that car very wide.
Yeah.
And Russell was having trouble getting past him. But to me, just to my eyes watching, I saw like the laps following the Leclerc overtake. I was like, I think Russell's cooked. Like Hamilton was visibly faster.
Yes.
And
was
to the
asking,
point
like,
where
is George, can we go faster? Yeah.
it was like, man, if you want proof that Hamilton's a pretty good teammate, I think a lot of racers, quite justly, would have been on that radio much earlier than when Hamilton gently raised that George needs to pick up the pace. It was clear George had done in his tires, and Hamilton had quite a bit left in hand. And it's further proof that Hamilton's still really good at this. Like George is a very talented teammate, and he can bring it. But Hamilton's one of the great tire managers in F1 history, and I think that I think to an extent one of the things that you see just in terms of technique, Hamilton finds his own pace as he reels in people, and he doesn't just do the lead follow thing. He drives his own race in a way that he is going to arrive in the overtake position with more tire and pace in hand, and then he's going to do his thing. And I think Russell started watching. He just started watching the tail end of Norris, and just started like, and you imagine how that's going to be harder on your tires because you're also then profoundly reactive. You were now like everything you are doing, you were pacing yourself off the car in front, and so I can easily imagine he's working his brakes a little harder. He's working those fronts a little harder. And so it's not totally surprising to me that after Leclerc, he didn't have any more pace left to make that challenge for the lead. And I think Hamilton may have, but he was stuck there, being a good trooper behind George.
Yeah, so Russell does try to, he gets up to Norris. Lap 59 is when he makes a move, sticking with him through the corner, preceding the straight that has a kink in it, and then trying to swoop around him. Norris doing just enough to place himself advantageously for the upcoming corners and manages to keep Russell just behind him for another couple of laps. And I'd just like to point out that we have a 4-way fight for the lead, which is something that so rarely happens these days in Formula One. It's like a MotoGP race. Out there.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Exactly.
You got Norris up there, slowing down to give Lando DRS so he stays ahead of the Mercedes. The Mercedes have better tires, and they're all like this. The last 5 laps of this were just so fantastic.
And nobody could have imagined how it actually would have ended.
No,
nobody could have imagined the order and also the means by which this entertaining race finishes.
Sorry, and the broadcast was so blessed because look, it was kind of gnarly to see, but they were in car with Stroll when that incident happened in Q1. I feel like multiple times in the race, we oddly enough have a perfect in-car camera of something completely unexpected happening.
100%.
The fact that we go to the Norris tail cam facing back toward George. And you see the moment where like Norris's car makes this turn. And it's a pretty routine turn. I saw no impact. Norris says he clipped the wall.
I didn't see it. In the replay, I see it all.
He makes the turn, and then you see Russell flying laterally past in a shower of sparks into this corner, and it's like it's over. The race is done. We now have a podium.
Last turn, like that's it. Like was it the last turn? Was it the last turn? Was it penultimate turn?
It was not the last turn.
It was Take us through it, Drew.
Well, yeah, it's the final lap. Russell has one more opportunity to take second, and with one DRS zone to go, they round turn 12, and Russell just doesn't turn. Like you said, Danny, and it's only in the replays that you see he clips the wall on entry. There is just a little part where the wall juts out. I think it's like for a Marshall stand. Breaks his suspension, and you're not turning there anymore. Sparks flying, noses into the barrier, out of the race. And we finish like that. Carlos Sainz in first, Lando Norris second, Lewis Hamilton inherits the podium. Charles Leclerc in fourth, Max Verstappen finishes fifth.
Yeah, monster.
Breaking the combo of 10 wins in a row for him and 15 wins in a row for Red Bull. Pierre Gasly comes home in 6th. Oscar Piastri 7th. Wow, he made it up from 17th place. That's impressive. Sergio Perez 8th. Liam Lawson 9th. Kevin Magnussen, the final points paying position. Really had to fight for it. But
and also was
check
lucky
in on the Albon thing.
Yes, he was lucky on two
That's
accounts.
next.
Magnussen was because
Yes.
not only because of the album situation right in front of him, but then also because of what happened to Russell. He was in 12th.
That's true. Yeah. So with 4 laps to go, Alex Albon was sitting in 8th place. And then Perez just absolutely creams him. I will put the link to this on in
Worst
the show notes.
overtake of the year. Like it was like
Yeah,
something out of a
100%.
multiplayer
It's
race.
amateurish. Like
Oh,
this is your count.
Something I would do in iRacing.
Banned in iRacing. Yep. This does not fly. And then I think it's right on the radio. He's like, you just turned across me. Yeah, we're on it. We're reporting to the marshal. Like, come on, man. Like, just like, who are you fooling? There's
Just
video
once I want an
evidence of the
engineer to go
crime.
like,
Yeah, Albon was livid, but somehow was able to get that car back on the track, like and keep going. So at least there was that. But he was livid.
Didn't Perez
me
also kind of get into Lawson as well at some point during this race? Like, I feel like he tangled with both the AlphaTauris.
Snowda Lawson, and he's just got something out for. He's all Helmut Marko. He's just taking it out on all the AlphaTauris.
yeah.
I don't know.
Again, a shout out to Liam Lawson. Finished 9th, 2 points, 3rd race.
Awesome, fair play.
Nico Jogon 12th, Nico Hulkenberg 13th, Logan Sargent 14th, Fernando Alonso finishes 15th, and then we've got the DNFs of George Russell, Valtteri Bottas, Esteban Ocon, Yuki Tsunoda, and the DNS
Yeah,
for Lance Stroll. Lewis Hamilton, fastest lap of the race. By the way, Perez did receive a 5-second time penalty for that Alex Albon collision, but it did not impact his finishing position.
I know, which seems quite unfair. After the race, then Russell obviously pretty quickly doing some interviews and stuff. We mentioned that Lando Norris's rear right hit that wall, the little part where it juts out. He mentioned it in the green room. It was a great little green room bit with him and Sainz.
I didn't realize that. So he hit the wall right before Russell did?
Yes, which makes it sound like Russell was sort of
Locked
following
onto his-
Lando a little bit too much.
Yeah.
Like using him as the marker for where to be. So almost in a sort of Star Wars, let's fly into the asteroid field to get these people off our back situation. Norris accidentally flies a bit too close to the sun on this wall, hits it himself, but then because he did that and Russell was basically tailing him as he was, like Rob was alluding to, he hits it with his front right, and that's why his suspension just snaps and he goes straight off. So he was on the radio screaming at himself for being a rookie. It's pretty heartbreaking team radio from Russell.
It was. I mean, it wasn't a good incident. Like, I mean, I
No.
think, if you're Russell, there's 2 things you look back on. One is that you may have had the winning tire strategy and you just couldn't execute it. It's one of there's moments where, like, just as the driver, it's time to go get it done. Like, this is how it's like the team has delivered you in striking distance. Now it's time to execute. And he was clearly not going to be able to do that. And then, sort of the passive way he approached the battle with Norris literally led him to make the same error that Norris made, but fatally.
Right.
But the important thing to remember is that everything is a positive for Mercedes. All negatives, they're just lessons. And so we got a beautiful little Wolf quote after the race. What I said to Russell is, I'd rather have this happening now, and the learning is there, than when we race for victory or for a championship. That's going to be engraved in him, this mistake.
Oh my God. That's spoken like a true manager.
Wolf sees something akin to enemy building, and he's just like, licking his chops. He's like, maybe what George needs is a framed photo of this incident, in his office. Yep. To motivate him.
Yeah.
Can we also, I know maybe it'll come up again, secret hero of this race, Charles Leclerc. Like, this guy, I think there's like, I know he's like, you know, he wants to be Ferrari's number one. He was a fantastic support driver this entire weekend. And without him sacrificing, like you said, in the pit lane, defending like a lion at the end of the race, and also sacrificing his race strategy by putting the softs on at the top of it. Like, he did a great job. And
also, I thought that soft strategy was going to be a catastrophe. Like, I really did. When I saw he was on softs, I was like, nope, that's not going to work. And he managed to sort of stay in there. Yeah, I mean, it was a well-timed safety car that ultimately didn't go his way, but like he kept those tires alive. And then, you know, despite the fact his shot at the podium was done, that defense against the Mercs was something.
I dare say it. I'm not saying that strategy won them the race. Obviously, Sainz did an awesome job, but Ferrari did great. Strategy-wise, they had it dialed in this week, and they seemed to make the right calls at the right time as well.
Ferrari strategy plus Carlos Sainz strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
Fair
listen,
play.
I think a few weeks ago, we were joking about like a lot of there's a Carlos army in our inbox, and there's people who are like, I don't know why everyone talks about Leclerc. Like, Carlos is every bit as talented. And boy, I'll tell you, the Carlos folks are like, there's a lot of signs pointing this season that like, this guy has number one material written all over him.
That's good. Now I want like a M. Night Shyamalan box cover of signs with just him. It says "Swing away, Charles."
All right. Well, that is it for the race recap. We're going to take a break, and we'll be back with the news. All right. Not a lot of news going on here. No. We got so much with the post-race of Singapore, but did want to shout out a couple things here. One, Alfa Romeo has opted to retain Valtteri Bottas and Zhou Guanyu for 2024. So congrats to those boys.
Congrats.
And then we have a follow-up here, Danny.
Yeah, just a little.
Helmut Marko.
Just a little follow-up on everyone's favorite grumpy grandpa. Helmut Marko. Big triple L last week, Rob, when it came to sort of being racist and also not really understanding
I followed
geography,
the levels to this,
the history of Grand Prix victories. So I only mention this because it ended up turning into an interesting war of words with Christian Horner, because basically the FIA said that they had submitted a written warning to Helmut Marko over the quote he said about Sergio Perez. We can confirm that Helmut Marko has received a written warning and has been reminded of his responsibilities as a public figure in motor sport in line with the FIA Code of Ethics. When Christian Horner was prompted on Sky Sports about why they didn't put out a statement about what Marko had said, he said that it wasn't an issue because Marko is not an employee of Red Bull Racing, which confused a lot of people. They were like, is he just hanging? Is he a +1? Like,
where'd he get the shirt?
Yeah, he's always, whatever. The journalists know that when they ask him questions. So
did he have to sign an NDA, or is he just
he just keeps turning up. He's just like, he's not even a doctor.
He's just like, me home.
We don't know what this guy's deal is. So apparently, this was just like some real word salad nonsense from Horner. He's a special advisor for Red Bull GmbH, the parent company of Red Bull Racing. So he's technically not an employee of Red Bull Racing. Honestly, the thing that this brought to mind to me was, is that okay with the cost cap? Are you allowed to have this guy around and have him be paid by the parent company if he's doing media stuff and chipping?
This would be like sending Capone to jail on tax fraud, but I actually would love it if the FAA did like sort of retroactively go back and like, so wait, then why is this guy part of the program and why does he get every race? Yeah. What's he doing? And the answer really is like not much. He doesn't contribute that much these days. He was inner circle with Dietrich Mateschitz for years and was sort of the liaison between the highest levels of Red Bull and their entire racing program.
To hear them say it, he basically runs their driver program, but who knows how true that is.
He doesn't get many drivers from South America, though.
Well, and so this is the thing, right? Like the program has really worked for people who got through it, and then there's a lot of drivers who've talked about how scarring working through Red Bull is. Like the thing that was so depressing about this is I fully sympathize with the position Checo's in here. Like he needs, like, what are you gonna do? Burn down your career? This is your ride. This is your job. What are you gonna do? Pick a fight with this guy who still clearly has juice at the company. So I understand why he was like keen to move on from it. At the same time, it's like it is embarrassing that you have to be the bigger man in this situation and be like, no, I understand. Like it's fine. The incident is closed. It's a big misunderstanding. It's like, yeah, it is a misunderstanding because Helmut Marko didn't know who to be racist against. He didn't know who to be bigoted against because he has an incredibly parochial worldview and apparently buys into every stereotype about Latins of any stripe.
Right.
And like I've been in those shoes where it's like someone just like it is a shockingly common occurrence for me how often someone's like, you know what? I think I'm in safe company here. Let me tell you this fun joke about refried beans and Mexicans that I've been working on. And like it's shocking how often it happens. And you're always left in this position of like, do I have to bring everything to a screeching halt now and like deal with this person? Because like we're in the middle we're in the middle of doing other stuff. So I really sympathize for the position Checo is in. I certainly would have liked to see him just tee off on the bastard. But the other thing is this. It really is on Red Bull to deal with this. Like Checo shouldn't like an employee affected by this shit where that's clear. Like this is what the guy at the top of the program thinks, which is that, well, he's just not as good because you know how South American drivers are. Also, I don't know where my drivers are. Or really, we know Mexicans aren't real North Americans, right? That's not what we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So it shouldn't be on Checo to fix that. But when that happens, the organization does need to be able to say, like, get gone. Like, I'm sure he's made valuable contributions to the program. He's been there since its inception. Sometimes your time is up.
And that's something that I'm now starting to either question, and I'm not. This could be an element of also, Helmut Marko's getting on a bit here, so maybe there's a world. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, and that maybe there's a world in which he was better at his job in the past. I don't know, but what it does call into question a little bit, it kind of reminds me of that Moneyball scene where it's all the old guys saying, "Oh, you can't pick that guy." All the scouts going like, "Oh, you can't pick that guy because he's got an ugly girlfriend." You know what I mean? What does an ugly girlfriend mean? Low confidence. Like, is this guy really, like, one of the things we have said about Red Bull over the past, and I think you could continue to do this over the past 15 years, is it whatever, is that one of the ways in which they have done a bad job is in managing their drivers, in imagining the sort of the broader bank of drivers they have, and then also in whether it be the Helmut Marko finishing school at AlphaTauri or teammates at Red Bull, like they've probably had more trouble than any of the other teams. Like Mercedes had Rosberg, Hamilton, but in general, in the modern era, I haven't seen that many really bad teammate pairings or ways in which operations have shot themselves in the foot. I am now starting to wonder a little bit: is he kind of part of the reason why they've had that problem for a long time? Like, not to do a sort of causality thing here, but like it is starting to make me wonder, like maybe he's not maybe like his proximity to Dietrich Mateschitz and like all that sort of stuff like served him, but like maybe he needs to fuck off. Like maybe they need to get someone in who can do the job properly.
Let me tell you, proximity to Dietrich Mateschitz is why a lot of people were important at Red Bull. Like, and I knew this even at my level of the organization.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Where it was like you knew who the people were. There was a clique of people who had Dietrich's ear, and no matter what level of dipshit you were dealing with, you had to walk on eggshells around them because they weren't inner circle and they were having the meetings you never knew anything about. And so like Helmut was in that tier. And I suspect, because I'm with you. If you look at, like, why is Red Bull so successful? Really, like, Mateschitz wanted to invest in F1, and he was also part of these decisions to be like, we're going to drop everything, we're going to get Horner, we're going to get Newey, and then Helmut, in consultation with Dietrich, I think made the Tost hire.
Okay.
But I don't think, sometimes Helmut is treated like he's the architect of this, and I think that is speculative, because I think Mateschitz was like part of a lot of the decisions, and Marco was advising him through a lot of this. But then once that core leadership of like Horner, Newey, and Tost were in place, I don't know that Marco really had an operational role where he was going to contribute anything except to make the vibes weird. And if you listen to an interview that Albon gave years ago, he went in kind of knowing that they didn't want him, in part because of things that Marco had said, which sounded eerily like what you're talking about, the Moneyball stuff, where he basically gives Albon the "your girlfriend's ugly" speech, but like about confidence, like you don't have the mien of a Red Bull driver. So yeah, I think the guy has created more headwind on the team, at least certainly in recent years, than he has contributed to forward momentum. But either way, it's like, in a functional organization that gives any kind of a shit about stuff like this, this is a disqualifying thing where it's like this person's suspended or they're on hiatus, because like he's talking about one of the two most important employees of the racing team, right? Like you can't do this. Even setting aside the morality of like saying shit like this, you just can't do it. But at Red Bull, you can. And it's embarrassing the degree to which Checo was left on his own for this. The team's
that's what makes me mad.
Past it.
Like, because going back to like the baseball analogy, if you have like the manager or the comes out of the dugout and screams at the referee, the umpire, even if he knows that the ump is right, because he's defending his player.
Yeah, totally.
I don't see that happening from Christian Horner.
No.
Okay, yes, Marco is part of the Red Bull organization, so maybe that's weird, but like, in this article, Danny, that you linked to from Autosport, he says, Horner does, firstly, those comments weren't right. Helmut quickly recognized that and apologized for that both publicly and directly to Sergio. I want a little more than that, I think.
Yeah, and he has
the head of the team. And
he has like defended, we were talking a couple months ago about how he was saying that he was helping out Checo in the public opinion, right? But I do think I wonder, is it just because like Marco's such a weird dude? like Horner also doesn't want to say anything that's like going to cause any more trouble. Like just like, oh, like we know he's our crazy old grandpa, and we just have to like put up with his weirdness and his racism and blah 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 blah, blah. I don't know. Like,
and listen, I'm also going to say, like, Max doesn't do himself any credit in this. You're a 3-time world champion at this point, effectively. You're a big boy now, and this is your teammate, and this is drama being caused in your house, and you are like one of the heads of that household now. And for him to also take the party line of
it's like Game of Thrones,
we just kind of move on from it, and it wasn't right, but I'm just going to keep my head down. And to be fair, this is his approach to everything like this that happens around him. Like, he just keeps his head down and doesn't want any part of that whatsoever. But I think there were multiple people who should have probably stepped up, because you have to recognize that Sergio can't. Sergio is in a position where he cannot say what he is probably entitled to and should. And so someone else who has juice in the conversation and leverage has to be able to do that. And by the way, Dietrich's dead. So Marco is he doesn't have a shield anymore. So I don't know why you're letting this guy drag the organization down around you. I think it's embarrassing that probably the most supportive comments given for Sergio here came from like Hamilton. Talking about, like, and you do expect that from Hamilton, and you'd always say cynically that Mercedes and Hamilton always love to stick little daggers in Red Bull when they get the chance, but I do think it was a fair point. Like, it was it sucked the degree to which Sergio was just like out on a limb there, dealing with the fact that Marco is a clueless dumbass.
Well, let's move on from that and talk about something fun, like Suzuka, Danny.
Suzuka, what a beautiful track. It's almost as old as I am. 1987, we've enjoyed Suzuka. It was built, I'm remembering this correctly. I should have written this down, but I'm pretty sure I knew it from before that it was Honda built this, right? I'm pretty sure it was.
Okay.
They had a Dutchman called
Yes, you're
John.
right.
It was? Thank you. Yes. They got a Dutchman called John Hugenholz to draw up the designs. The original design didn't have the one crossover we enjoy today. It had 3.
Oh my God. I didn't know
Which-
that.
And a
Seems-
loop-de-loop.
Exactly.
Never
right?
forget what they took from us.
Totally. We weren't prepared for Hugenholz's world. It's 53 laps long, 5.8 kilometers, 3.6 miles. This is a fast circuit, and it needs to be. They go uphill for a chunk of it, and then they come downhill, and there's a crossover. It's just a wild-ass track. There's 18 turns. There's every type of weird... Like, there are turns on Suzuka that just don't exist anywhere in F1. Like, 130R, obviously, being this crazy high-speed turn in the middle of Sector 3. The Degnas at the start of Sector 2 that are just these oddball, like they're 90-degree turns, but they feel very different to any other ones you've ever been at.
Yeah, turns 2 through 7 are like, they're wiggly, but they get wigglier as they go on.
And it's uphill.
You know what I mean?
So it just feels like it's just like you've more grip because you're going uphill as well, so you can take them a little faster. Then you have the beautiful at the end, you know, you've got the Ferris wheel and all that sort of stuff. Suzuka's just a great track for a bunch of different reasons. There's loads of those spoon curve, like the weirdness of the double apex. I guess it is technically 2 turns, 13 and 14, which just has the world's biggest runoff area up there. It's wide in parts, probably a good thing because sometimes they just like to have support vehicles drive in the opposite direction in the rain, so that's really important. And to that point, like Red Bull should do well here. It's a high speed track. You know, there's some fast turns, but it's mostly going to benefit straight line speed here. And while there is only one DRS zone because of the weirdness of how this track is built, and I guess also because of 130R, they're going fast enough before they turn left there, I think is the general sort of consensus there. But aside from that, it also is one that can throw up some interesting weather situations, as we've seen in recent years.
Yes, indeed. Let's see here. For qualifying day, we've got a looks like 89 degrees. That's quite warm, partly cloudy, with a 40% chance of rain.
Oh, Lord.
Yes. And on race day, a little cooler and a little lower chance of rain. So we're looking at 85 and 2% on Sunday.
That's quite a lot lower.
Yeah.
Than 40. Damn it.
Quite a lot. But let's run down the driver standings as we head into the Japanese round. Verstappen is on top with 374 points. Sergio Perez, his teammate, in second place with 223. A little further back is Lewis Hamilton with 180 points. Fernando Alonso still in fourth place with 170. Carlos Sainz in fifth with 142 points. He loves those fives. Leclerc is in sixth with 123. George Russell in seventh with 109. Norris eighth with 97. Stroll ninth with 47. And Gasly in 10th with 45. Behind him, we have Piastri with 42, Ocon with 36, Albon with 21 points, Hulkenberg with 9, Bottas in 15th with 6 points. Zhou has 4, Tsunoda and Magnussen both have 3 points. Lawson has 2, and then Sargent, De Vries, and Ricciardo, who inhabited that other car, or De Vries and Ricciardo did, rather, they all have 0 points. In constructor standings, Red Bull Racing is on top with 597 points. Mercedes is in second with 289. Ferrari's in third with 265. That is becoming a close battle. Aston Martin is in fourth with 217. McLaren's in fifth with 139. Then we've got Alpine in 6th with 81. Williams in 7th with 21. Gene Haas and team have 12 points now in 8th place. In 9th place is Alfa Romeo with 10 and Alpha Tauri in 10th with 5. If you would like to join the rankings yourself, you can do so in our fantasy league using the link in the show notes. From Singapore, we have the top 3 podium of, in 3rd place, Papaya Pals. In 2nd place, Josh's Team 1. And in 1st place, Polymash 23B.
Whoa. That's an AI team, if ever I heard one.
But overall, the standings look like this. In 3rd place, Time to Call _Gene. 2nd place, Horner to the max. And number 1, Paying the Stroll Toll.
Nice. Speaking of Horner to the max, I believe Jerry Halliwell is doing a book signing in my local bookstore in a couple of weeks' time. And I was like, I bet it's close to when Austin is happening. And it kind of is. So I was like, should I go down and see if Christian is hanging out in downtown Petaluma?
Take a Zoom recorder.
Yeah, just go down and say, hi, Petaluma F1 News here. Shift+F1's Petaluma reporter. I was like, all right. She's doing like she has a kid's book, I think she wrote or something.
Okay.
She's doing a little tour, so there you go. Might spice up my life and head down there,
Wow. If you'd like to spice up our inbox, you can send emails to shiftf1podcast@gmail.com or f1.cool/emails. You can also hit us up on the socials. That is us around the internet, though. Would you like to take it around the world, Danny?
Let's race around the world. Yeah.
MotoGP is at the
That's it. The
International Circuit, BUDDH, in Uttar Pradesh in India. Oh, I heard about this. Some teams and riders, are unable to attend due to visa issues.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah, haven't had that happen in a while.
Riders. That's wild. Yeah. So that,
the World Superbike Championship. Yep, Jay Leno was there. They're in Teruel, Spain for the Aragon round.
Yeah. Beautiful. Middle Earth's best race. We love that one.
It's great this time of year.
Yeah.
DTM is at the Red Bull Ring.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, in Spielberg, Austria. The NASCAR Xfinity Series is at the Texas Motor Speedway in Fort Worth, TX for Andy's Frozen Custard 300.
Oh, beautiful. That's a great one. I hope they're handing out frozen custard. They were handing out Idaho mashed potato at PAX, and it was rank. It was just like these little microwave mashed potato things that have like mashed potato and cheese in them. Not cool. I'll take the custard any day.
We also got NASCAR.
Oh, yeah.
Also in Tejas.
We're going to get some of that custard.
Probably. And then we're going to get a car from Auto Trader Echo Park Automotive 400.
Terrific. We love that album.
What?
That's it. It's all like Echo Park. Isn't that a... What band is that again? I forget. Echo Park.
I don't know.
I'm going to look it up now.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Echo
Formula
Park
One,
album.
maybe you've heard of it. The Japanese Grand Prix. The Lenovo Japanese Grand Prix, apparently. This weekend is happening at the Suzuka.
A British band you may not know. Feeder. I don't think they broke the States, but they were pretty great.
The Suzuka circuit is located in Ino, Suzuka City,
Ooh.
Mie Prefecture.
Ah, beautiful. Lovely Mie.
And watch out for the times because they're weird this weekend. Thursday, September 21st at 10:30 p.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2 is Free Practice 1, followed by Friday, September 22nd at 2 a.m. on ESPN2 is Free Practice 2. Free Practice 3, Friday, September 22nd at 10:30 p.m. on ESPNU, followed by qualifying later the following morning, Saturday, September 23rd at 2 a.m. on ESPN2, and the race, everyone, Sunday, September 24th at 1 a.m. Eastern Time on ESPN2. The Deuce.
Boy, oh boy.
Boy, oh boy. Look at that runtime, Danny. Do you want to take us through this day in history?
I do. September 20th in history. Jackie Ickx has won the Canadian Grand Prix twice on this day, both times leading home a 1-2 for his team. The first was in 1969 when racing for Brabham. Ickx qualified in pole position and duelled with Jackie Stewart for the lead until they collided and Stewart was unable to get going again. Ickx won the race with Jack Brabham second. The leaders all lapped the hopeless local driver Al Peace at least 4 times before the marshals had had enough and black flagged him. He remains the only driver in F1 history to be pulled out of a race for being too slow. The following year, Ickx won the race again, this time leading home Clay Regazzoni for a Ferrari 1-2. Al Peace did not take part.
Oh, poor
Sorry,
Al. Where's the documentary about Al?
Al, I know, yeah, too slow. I'd be too slow. If I tried it, I'd be shitting myself. No chance. Absolutely
Especially
no
back
chance.
then in the Jackie Ickx days. What year? Do you have a year on those?
69 and 70, those were.
Okay, yeah. Okay, that is
Yeah. He might have lived a very healthy, long life. Maybe.
Well,
I hope.
maybe for the best.
Yeah.
All right. Well, final thoughts, Danny, ahead of Japan.
My final thoughts are that we might get some movement on AlphaTauri by the time this podcast is put up.
You think so?
There are some rumblings that, because I mean, there also would be because it's a new cycle and you know what's going to happen. But you know they have Lawson, Tsunoda, and Ricciardo for those 2 seats. Lawson has thrown a spanner in the works, as it were, by doing quite well. I kind of had assumed that the general desire on the AlphaTauri side was probably to get Ricciardo in the car, have him get a couple of decent races in, and then to set him up for the postseason leading into next year to be able to work with the car and do well. If I was a betting man, I would say Lawson's going to be the one that loses out on this. But I wouldn't be surprised if we heard soon. Either way, it kind of feels like they need to make that call soon because what's going to happen is I don't think Ricciardo's driving Suzuka. But whatever happens, if he's there, and he has been there, he was there last weekend, not in Suzuka, he was at the Singapore Grand Prix. All that's going to happen is more and more questions, especially if Lawson keeps doing well. So yeah, I wouldn't. I'm just thinking about that at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if after we've recorded this and before the race that maybe we hear some action on that. I'd be interested to hear it.
All right. Yeah, me too. Rob, final thoughts before Japan.
The Australian cork hat has 10 corks that are designed to swing and keep the flies at bay while also keeping your head cool with 4 ventilation holes positioned around the hat. The iconic kangaroo road sign emblem is okay, well this is from australiathegift.com .au. But the cork hat is a thing. If you type cork ha, it auto-completes to Cork Hat Australia. So this is not a Danny hallucination.
Oh, thank
this
God.
is someone had the idea of you put a little hat with tons of little things that act like little tails that will swat flies away.
That's what it is. That's genius. Have you guys never seen this before?
I might have just like tuned it out. You know, sometimes if something just doesn't fit, like I don't know how to process that. You just don't see it. I was like, oh, they just wear like bush hats, so, like bucket hat type things. Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I was probably exposed to more Australian themed media, or maybe just Australian related racism. I don't know. Growing up in Ireland and having being exposed to a lot of BBC. Like, did you guys watch Around the Twist at all growing up?
Don't know what that is.
Yes, it's like it's an Australian like kids TV show which was also broadcast in the UK, or like Home and Away and Neighbours. You guys wouldn't have ever watched that stuff, right? Whereas like my sister would. Yeah, that was on every day. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I was just exposed to more of the rich culture of Australia.
I do remember Crocodile Dundee walking across the heads of New Yorkers in a subway to get to the woman he loved. And it was like, you know, there's lessons this humble man from the outback has to teach all of us.
Exactly.
It's true.
Play knifey spoony.
Well, If you'd like to support the show and get access to all of our bonus episodes, the ad-free version of the podcast, and the official Shift F1 Discord, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShiftF1. Have a good race weekend, everyone. We will see you all next week.